Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of One Piece Madness, joined by your host, or One Piece Uncle, and your co-host, the One Piece Dada. How are you, man?
I'm good.
Merry
It's
Christmas.
freeze. It's freezing here. It's freezing
Happy
here.
holidays. Happy holidays for people who don't like saying Merry Christmas. Uh, yeah,
Don't open those can of worms. But I'm telling you, it's free. It's actually below freezing, and then it's supposed to go up to 40 to 50 degrees again Fahrenheit for any non-U.S. viewers. It's supposed to go up
my
that high. It's crazy.
my aunt or my masi were in WhatsApp groups, and she's been sending screenshots of the temperature there. Then I went back to the weather app just to see what the temperature is going to be throughout the week. Yeah, it's below 0 Fahrenheit right now, and then it's going to jump up to like 40 by the
Yeah,
end of
it's
the week.
crazy. It's extremely weird. We should make a video on global warming.
Uh, yeah, I don't want to be too
Global
Greta
warming.
Thunberg. I don't want to be too Greta Thunberg. So yeah, I know I don't mind. We'll craft a specific purpose of that video.
Yeah,
But
specific. No, definitely because this is not normal. I see people going out like, oh, the weather's so nice, and it'll be like 70 degrees in November. I'm like, this is not normal. Well, why do you think this is okay?
that's another discussion for another day. Uh,
Yep.
we're here to talk about what the Mads used to look like in the cover story of this chapter, and it's very very interesting from my observation. From last chapter, the cover story showed them as pacifists. The flag was waving a pacifist kind of. It said pacifist on the Jolly Roger of the ship, and now they're having guns and ready to attack. Couple of my observations: Queen wasn't lying when he said that he's fat so that uh, he basically doesn't want to lose weight because then he'll be too popular. And I can tell, bro. His design is amazing when he was younger and thin back in the day.
Wait, which one is Queen?
Queen is the leftmost, the tallest one.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, he looked completely different.
He looks
It
super
was
cool.
almost.
Like it's
But
so
it
it's
was.
so so it's a good thing he's fat. Otherwise, he would take over Luffy as the MC.
But which one is Judge then?
Judge is the one right next to uh, Vegapunk, on Vegapunk's left.
On Vegapunk's left?
Yeah, and right next to Judge, that's actually another thing I wanted to bring up is a weird uh, they Oda hasn't revealed who the character is next to Judge, and the two theories right now floating around is either Stussy, because she was very sus the last couple of chapters. She knew too much, and she didn't tell the CP0 before coming to Egghead, so maybe she's been in cahoots with them. And the other, I think Morge brought up that he thinks, or not Morge, I think Joy Boy brought up that he thinks it's Sora, and that's how the relationship between Judge and Sora started. Which one do you think it
My,
is, or someone new? I don't know.
I like both theories, and when I read this first, I'm like, it's Stussy. Look at the design, but she's also very young compared. Like she's young now, so it's unlikely for her to be the same age, like what 15, 20 years ago. So maybe it is Sora, and Joy Boy is right. That would make a lot of sense. And
Also,
the hair color looks like it's blonde, right? So fits in with Sanji too.
the thing with Stussy is that we don't know her age. It's never been confirmed that she's 30 right now. Apparently, some people are theorizing that she's found a way to make herself look young forever, and that's maybe why she was part of Mads. Um, if you remember back to Whole Cake Island, or was it? I don't remember when it was, but basically, someone had asked her how old is she, and she just dodged the question. So since then, people have been theorizing that maybe she's 50 or 60, but she's found a way to look young forever.
That could be true too. I mean, she is a scientist, so
Yeah, so
that
you
would
know
fit
how
into what.
each person in maths has specialized in something.
Yeah,
Stussy could have specialized in eternal youth. So again,
that
you
would
never know.
be that's a good theory and a very interesting outcome, and it would make us see a more interesting character and see how much she knows more about the One Piece world than we even would imagine.
For sure. Maybe she's worked with Dr. Correa before, you know? I just thought about this. Like, Dr. Korea has been is how old, but she's still very active.
True.
That
That's also true
that could
too.
be a cool way to bring her back into the story.
Yeah, we haven't seen her in a long time. Unlikely, but it's possible.
Unlikely. That's just a wild theory I just came up with. After the cover story, that it's just a lot more cool fighting sequences between Luffy and Lucci. I really enjoyed it. But the panel that hit me the most is Frankie crying for Senior Pink, and all of us were worried that Senior Pink died because we knew that Vegapunk, and we'll get to this later. We knew that Vegapunk could recreate zone fruits, but we didn't know if he could recreate Paramecias. And we thought that he could, but it wasn't confirmed. And this chapter basically confirms it. Very touching scene. Basically, Senior Pink is an impel down, and we still have maybe one day a chapter where we see Frankie and Senior Pink having that glass of alcohol, talking about women in a bar. That would be a glorious day.
The thing is, yeah, that was a good game. We were all speculating whether Senior Pink is actually gone, dead. Like, how did it work? I mean, I had a feeling I mean, there's also a part of us to know One Piece, and Oda doesn't really do off-screen killings that much for characters that we know of. So I would, it's not that surprising that he's not dead, and they just got that, blood or whatever Vegapunk's using, which we can get into regarding making the devil fruits.
In the anime, Senior Pink got a lot of screen time and a lot of backstory, which makes him an important character enough for him not to be off
Yeah,
screen death.
yeah,
It was really touching. But yeah, we can move on to the creation of artificial devil fruits. We knew that zones were possible because we saw Caesar making the smiles, and uh, they were pretty much defective, very defective compared to the perfectionism that Vegapunk strives for. And we know how Vegapunk likes to work. He needs time and resources, and he has lack thereof. But he was able to create Kaido's devil fruit almost 99.9% accurately, except for the color. But what's more interesting is that how paramecias are created. He basically adds something to the blood which makes it green, and then that's how he can inject it into another being. Now that's where I have questions on, like, do you have are they is it only that you can inject it to a seraphim or like a artificial being for them to realize the devil fruit power, or can you inject it into a living human being and them have another devil fruit, paramecia devil fruit? That's something that I'm trying to figure out. Which one is it? What do you think?
yeah. I mean, I would say that's a very interesting point to make. It's hard to say. I mean, it feels like maybe you can't put in regular people because he mentions about the blood that they have green. The Seraphim actually have green blood running through them, not red blood like regular people do. So, is it does that mean you can't put it into living creatures, or is it just the artificial creatures? But I would say maybe he can put it into like robots and stuff too, because that's basically
Yeah,
what the Seraphim are. Like, they're like cyborgs. Basically, they're a combination of living and non-living materials together.
yeah. I mean, Frankie says that. Sorry, not Frankie. Sanji says that you basically made navy weapons, and that's all they are. They're just navy weapons.
Yeah, but I want to get back to that about them just being weapons because clearly he's using living material, and he mentions that too. Like, with getting the blood and getting their bloodline elements is a term that's used in the official. I don't know how it is in the non-official um, translation, but the bloodline basically, I guess, kind of means DNA. He's kind of more referring to like their DNA, their essence to get
Yeah,
that devil fruit. To get that, I would think that's what he's more like. If we were to use it in common terms today, it would be DNA. He might mean, or he might mean literally the blood. And then that opens up another question with devil fruits. Is it like when you have a devil fruit is literally merged into you? Like, if I took my blood out and I had a devil fruit, will you notice a difference between a non-user? It's a good question to ask.
or is it like if you inject it into a human, they get the powers temporarily, until the green blood passes through their system in whatever way
Yeah.
possible. That might be something
Well,
interesting as well, like steroids.
yeah. Well, I'm saying like even like for example, let's say you're a non-user and I'm a user. If I take that blood and inject it to you, will that make you be able to use whatever fruit that I'm using as a living creature, not the green blood?
I don't think so because the whole point is to in the TCB translation, he says that they add a blood additive, like they synthesize a blood additive, which then allows the blood to be transfused into like Seraphim. So that's not the
Okay,
case.
okay.
Like you can't give me your blood. That's not how it works.
Yeah, so and I guess that would be the most consistent because then by that logic, Jinbei should have Luffy's powers too from the blood.
Oh, the main thing why I wanted to bring this up is that in this chapter, Vegapunk pretty much says that each Seraphim has a devil fruit. So we know Jinbei has Shark has the swim fruit. S Snake has the Mero Mero. That's we know what we know so far. What do you think Mihawk has? And this has and the devil fruit that he has can only be people who are currently in Impel Down or in the Navy because you need the blood sample from them to create the green blood. So I know it's a tough question, but like which devil fruit do you think would be the coolest among the ones that we have available right now, the Paramecias, in Impel Down or within the world government?
Yeah, hold on. I just want to give a second to mention what you're talking about with the special kind of blood. So in the official translation, it's he says you can synthesize and administer a special kind of blood to confer those powers to others. So yes, basically in a very general, he's saying yes, you would have to do that. I just want to clarify that. And along with that, I think for Mihawk, maybe something that makes him go fast or disappear. Maybe I don't know what devil fruit Mihawk would want because he doesn't have one in real life either. Like the real one doesn't have it.
Yeah, but we know that each of the seraphim that Vegapunk has created has a devil fruit. He pretty much says it in the chapter somewhere. I don't remember where. I'll have to scroll through it. But I was watching some YouTube videos, and a lot of people were theorizing a lot of different stuff. I think Tekking was theorizing him having Dasbone's devil fruit, number one in
The
Borough
diamond
Court.
one, the
No,
diamond one, right?
he basically turns into steel. So if, for example, Yoru gets knocked out of S Snake's Mihawk's, is he S Hawk? Yeah, S Hawk's hand, then maybe he could turn into a sword himself and then start slicing people up. Another one would be another cool one he could have is like the Rust one. I don't know if you remember in Enies Lobby there was a character that Zoro fought who turned one of Zoro's swords into Rust.
I don't remember.
That could be one of the devil fruits that he has. But what I thought about, what if he had Diamante's devil fruit, where he could turn anything like Diamante's devil fruit is basically him turning anything into like he can bend anything, right? So if he could bend his sword and manipulate the length and everything, that would be a super crazy way to enhance Yoru already. It's already an OP sword. It's a black blade, so like what if he had like Diamante's devil fruit, That's what I think would be interesting.
Yeah, I mean my thing is like he already has so much power. He doesn't need to extend his sword. He already can cut basically like mountains and islands. So like, how much more do you want to extend your blade?
I don't know, man. Like maybe he could wrap someone with it and then slice them like an anaconda or something.
Yeah. Before we move on, I do want to mention one small thing that I noticed that I actually kind of liked is Luffy somewhat struggling with the devil fruit. Like he's kind of tumbling and having some issues. Like I think the crazy nature of his awakening, he's kind of showing that he's still a little new at using it and controlling it. And kind of does get a little carried away with the power because he starts spinning and he can't control himself. And they're like, "What are you doing?"
This has been him since the start, though, right? Like even this just reminded me of like his fight with Arlong in Arlong Park arc, right? Where he took inspiration from Gonzo's windmill thing, and then he implanted his feet into the ground and took out the earth, and then just smashed Arlong with it. But then he didn't have any idea how to take his feet out of the ground. So then Arlong used that to throw him into the ocean and used the ground as a weight to pull him down. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, so he's always been that crazy kind of guy who like doesn't care. Like he'll just try something new and then he'll feel backfire. He'll figure something way. He'll figure out a way to get back.
Well, yeah, Luffy for sure is reckless, but he with everything that he's able to do, he kind of is able to control more of his other forms compared to Gear Fifth at this point. It's very volatile. Like just do whatever.
I mean, you can also tell by his state after he gets out of gear fifth. He's pretty much drained. He's like he's exhausted, and like
Yeah,
it takes him 32 seconds to get back to normal, which is a much bigger improvement from the 10 minutes from gear fourth. But yeah,
yep,
uh, basically the 32 seconds it took the rocket to get to the upper atmosphere, whatever Vegapunk calls it. And when he entered the rocket, it just took off. So it takes about like half a minute for him to regenerate and get back to normal. But it takes a lot out of him. And
yeah.
the
It
same
takes a
thing
lot out.
happened when he just found out gear third. He turned into a midget. Gear fourth, he needs 10 minutes to regenerate his HAKI. So it's always in the beginning of a new power up that he needs a like a what do you call it? Like a fall. I can't
A
remember the word
rest,
right now, but
recharge.
yeah, rest. No, rest. But I mean, there's another word, but like rest is good for now. I'm brain fart.
All right.
What was your theory on the part of the chapter where we see S Snake finally talking? Because I remember you told me about that.
Yeah.
Like,
So my
like for the
thing
first time we see a
is
Seraphim talking, basically. So, like, what's happening with that? What's your theory?
yeah, because so this was a very eye opening. Again, it runs back to what Vegapunk said about controlling the desires of living things. So like when Jinbei mentions that like she's nicer than Hancock, like the real one, and she's like instance I'm only following my orders, nothing more, and she kind of like does what Hancock does, like if expression wise, like she gets kind of embarrassed or whatever. I honestly think that there's at the end game eventually the Seraphim are gonna turn on the world government, either to do their own thing or to go to side with Luffy. And my reasoning is just because when she did that moment, like did that action, it just shows that she's still Hancock to an extent. That thinking still exists in her mind. Right now, she's following orders, but at one point, Hancock did follow orders from the world government. And I just think that eventually they'll turn just because that's how Hancock is now. The the mindset will eventually change. And their children now, too. They mentioned that, Stussy mentioned like they're children now. So they're children now, they're following orders because they're children. But when they're not children anymore, how what individual desires or goals will they have?
So here's the thing with the Hancock thing, right? Like, she's saying it in a way and she's blushing. I I kind of disagree with you here because we don't see her blushing ever. She's always like hard on the outside, never blushing, never. The only time we see her blushing is when she falls for Luffy. Before that, she was like she was pretty much a bitch, right? She was kicking cats and dogs and insulting people, and they were still falling for her because she's so beautiful, right? Uh, so I think your theory makes sense to a certain extent. So the thing with Hancock, right, is that she got the Mero Mero, the Seraphim got the Mero Mero fruit, and they need a sample from Hancock for them to to give the Seraphim the Mero Mero. I don't think current Hancock would give her blood sample because she has too much pride in that. So it goes back to the beginning of the Egghead arc where Lilith was telling the straw was basically complaining that she couldn't control the shark's inert desire, like its desire to attack. So I feel like, and the thing with Hancock was that she was a prisoner, like she was she was a slave to the to the celestial dragons, and she was force fed the Mero fruit when she was a child. So they might have taken blood samples of all the slaves at the time. So they had a blood sample of Hancock with the Mero fruit. So what if the blood sample they have is contains the part of her will and her personality as a child? Like maybe she was like a Sundere type character. Like she would be hard on the outside, but she was still soft, like blushing, like that kind of character from the inside. If you
But that
kind of penetrate the exterior.
Yeah, but that kind of points to my theory even more, right? Because if they're only getting samples from a certain period of time, and assuming that they're kids, that they are allowed to develop their own personalities just because of that, because they're still living, that as adults they might have their own will. It's possible that you might have a risk of a fourth faction too: the revolutionaries, world government, emperors, and then Seraphim going on their own just because of that. They're kids right now. They can be adults later. This is um, uh, Kid
Moa.
Hancock. So yeah, Kid Hancock. So she's kind of like, um, showing that expressions, but because of the unique experiences, just like we say, it's a nature versus nurture type thing. You know how how you are born, the DNA that you have versus the environment that you're in. The environment that she's in might make her a completely unique character compared to Hancock. Same thing with Mihawk too.
There's just. Do you think the Seraphim will have a will of their own, or are they just robots? Because I think Vegapunk is too smart for him to give the Gorosei the ultimate command to the Seraphim. Like, if you remember the last chapter, we got a chain of command, like who they listen to, the Gorosei were the top. So I feel like there must be an off switch or something that Vegapunk can turn the Seraphim off. Because in this chapter also, if Vegapunk pretty much says that once they grow up, they will be the strongest creatures, the strongest beings on this earth. So how can Vegapunk let something like that roam around where he could just turn them off or self-destruct them or something? Like it's just not in him to not have a fall safe.
Well, yeah, every day I'm telling you, it's like it's just based on their will. Like that's just they will have their own when they develop their own personalities. Their will change. I'll give you a good example, and I'm saying this because Oda's a everyone's a Dragon Ball Z fan. Everyone is. All mangakas love Dragon Ball Z. They use that as inspiration. Luffy's an inspiration of Goku. Um,
Yeah, with the food and shit.
exactly, just with the food, silly personality, like those are all things inspirations taken, and for all shonen characters almost now, to an extent. Now you see in the Dragon Ball Z there is an arc. I don't know how familiar you are, but there's the androids arc where Doctor Zero thought, he can control them, that they'll listen to him, and they just went berserk, killed him, went after killing whoever they want. Like these Seraphim are basically like the androids. Those they might develop. The only difference is that they're actually kind of bio developing from an age. Like they're getting older and older. Like they're not just at one set age coming out of the machine or whatever it is or tube. So there's likely that case where they will develop their own will.
Maybe. It's, I also wanted to touch on Kizaru finally coming, and I was watching Mord's video, and he was basically saying that chapter 1070 is basically the same as chapter 1069. Uh, Fight with Lucci, the of the Seraphim was on Vegapunk's side. Now they're on World Government side. Sentomaru was on the floor in the beginning. Sentomaru's on the floor in the end. Kizaru said he was coming last chapter. Kizaru said he's coming this chapter. So there isn't much development in the macro sense of the chapter, right? But he's still coming, and we find out this at the end of this chapter that he's bringing a lot of manpower. He's gonna mess everyone up. So, have any of your thoughts changed from the last chapter of the Kizaru conflict, or what's happening with
I
him?
mean, when Morge puts it that way, it's it kind of like really putting a dent on this chapter. Like basically it's the same thing. But in terms of the fighting, it's the same thing. But we still get the development of the devil fruits and
Yeah,
just that
Lord of is
understanding
crazy.
of yeah, and the seraph and just understanding of the seraphims a little bit more too. But I'll say one thing that if the thing is with Kizaru is that he's slow, so the fact that he's saying again that he's coming is not that surprising. He runs very relaxed, so maybe that's why he's still saying he's coming and hasn't really come yet. Now, if he's bringing battleships, I think there might be a case where the Straw Hats just leave and they avoid this whole thing. That by the time they come, they're gone. They're not gonna try. I don't think they're gonna try to engage in a full battle.
Do you think he's gonna be mad at Lucci for basically gutting Sentomaru?
Probably, he could kill him basically.
But Sentomaru did betray Kizaru in a way. It's
Yeah,
very interesting
Kizaru's
for Sentomaru. I want to know where his character goes from here.
and you know what's interesting too, like Kizaru and Sentomaru were basically together on in Sabati, like when they all fought and they brought the pacifista. So it would be interesting dynamic, and Sentomaru going the other way. But I think in the end, Kizaru is like a hard one to predict. So I don't know how he will react to Lucci disobeying, but maybe he might not care that much because he's a relaxed guy too.
People have brought up the fact that this is like a Sabaudi 2.0. Kuma's coming, Sentomaru's there, Kizaru's coming. Back then, we had really to protect whatever was left of the Straw Hats, but this time we don't have him. So this can show a lot of real progression in how far the Straw Hats have come, which is why I don't want them to leave as soon as Kizaru comes. There has to be some conflict between them. Uh, Otherwise, it might just be a waste of a story of progression.
I guess I mean maybe if you get a battle of Luffy versus Kizaru, just so he can get that, we want to see a little bit more of that conflict and see how far Luffy is compared to the admirals, because
What might happen? Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
no, it's alright. You could go.
I mean, what might happen? This is just me predicting. They do a little clash before Kizaru finally sees what happens to Sentomaru, and then in that moment of distraction, the Straw Hats get away with the what does Frankie call it when he blasts off the ship?
The
Then he flies away.
Kuda burst.
Yeah, the coup de burst. They could basically set up the ship while Kizaru is distracted with Sentomaru, and then they could just coup de burst out of there with Vegapunk, and Sentomaru gets left behind.
Yeah, that
I
could
can
be
see that
possible
happening
too. It's
because
just I don't. I
Elbaf
just
is
don't.
next, so they cannot stretch this too much.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're all assuming that Elbaf is next, so I don't know how long Oda would want this to be a long, drawn out battle. Or maybe he does, and it's just a faster battle, and it's like 5, 6 chapters, 7 chapters, and maybe it's not going to be as long, or maybe for whatever reason, maybe something happens, excuse me. For whatever reason, something happens that Kizaru chooses not to fight Luffy and them because they still need to get the go ahead from the you know the top to actually decide do they really want to engage a emperor.
Right. On that note, hopefully there's a chapter next week. If not, then we have some other discussions in the pipeline. Something about Vegapunk, something about Devil Fruits. We're gonna think about it, and hopefully this time next week you're gonna get another One Piece video, if there's not a new chapter discussion. Uh, Thanks again for being a part of this experience, Hatem. This has been your favorite One Piece creators signing out. Peace.